culture doesn't know any better. They don't know what forces are involved in shaping human behavior. Therefore, they invent their own concept and project their own values into human behavior and say that's human nature. That's where they're wrong.
We all put forward a perspective, which is what I'll be presenting you today, which is that human beings cannot be separated from their environment, and that in order to understand a human being, you have to understand the environment. And the implication is also that if we're going to be different human beings or foster different human beings, we have to look at the environment.
Physical phenomenon will enable us to understand the factors responsible for shaping our attitudes and our conduct.
All natural scientists assume that their subject matters are lawful and orderly. I mean, if they're not, then you can't do science. Behavioral scientists assume that human behavior and the behavior of other organisms is also lawful and orderly. To not assume that means that you accept that human behavior is somehow separate from the rest of nature. We don't make that assumption. We make the assumption that human behavior is part of nature.
Human behavior is just as lawful as everything else.
The sunflower does not turn to the sun. The sun makes it turn by pulling in membranes. A sailboat cannot sail. The wind moves it. Plants can't grow. They are shoved by sunshine, soil, temperature, all kinds of things. All things are shoved by something else. All people are acted upon by other things. Remember, your mother said cup, table, light, papa, mama, over and over again until you did the same thing.
Our behavior is generated by the many interacting variables that we encounter.
The environment can never be the same for any two individuals. And that really counters claims that people make when they say, well, you know, I have 3 children and they were all raised in the same environment, but they all turned out so different. Well, by that definition, the same environment refers to the house they lived in or the parents they had.
There's no such thing as the same environment. If you have 2 kids, one is 4 years old and you play with them, and the 7-year-old is standing there with her lower lip, you say, what's the matter? And the kid goes like that. And when you're making jealousy and envy, that's where it comes from.
But from a scientific perspective, the environment really consists of the moment-to-moment interactions between your behavior and those events, both inside and outside you. So the environment is in constant flux.
You put the young kid on your lap and the older kid. Say, I love you both. You never play with any one kid or have a favorite. You say, you can go to the movie, but you can't because you didn't do your homework. When she falls down the stairs, you have a grin on your face. You know what I mean? Not that you're bad, but you feel you've been mistreated.
To place and throughout history.
I think notions of aesthetics and beauty are for the most part learned. I mean, all you have to do is cross-cultural examinations of what people consider to be attractive and beautiful, and you'll find that they differ widely from culture to culture, and sometimes they differ widely within the same culture.
There are people who wear brass rings around their neck. They stretch their neck. If you took those rings away, the head would fall over, and they call that beauty. On some of the islands I went to visit, if the girl had a buttock that stuck way out, that was beautiful. The other girls were nothing.
But even a girl might find herself shut up in a cage until she's put almost 265 pounds that make her almost, but not quite eligible for marriage in her country.
I know there are suggestions that there are genetic contributions to what we think is beautiful, but I think the most parsimonious explanation we can have for what constitutes beauty to a given individual has to come from that individual's environment, the culture they're raised in.
If everybody had a nose a foot long, you'd have surgery done. There is no such thing as beauty. It's all projection. If you marry the most beautiful girl in the world, but she turns out to be a pain in the butt, that face becomes ugly to you. I wanted to know whether men have a natural attitude toward women or do they learn it. So I went to some island years ago. But the interesting thing about the islands is they wore no clothing. And I never saw a male stare at the female body. Children swim nude when they're babies, boys and girls together. There was no peeping toms on their house. There was no pictures of nude women up on the wall in their huts. Because it was a normal thing to be nude. They said to the girl, "Me like you," and they stroked them from the top of the head all the way down. But they didn't go for the breast. Men go for women's breasts. In this country, they say, "Taught, hey, get a load of that chick."
And whose fault is it? It's not the Democrats' fault.
And it's all Obama's fault.
Of course, the traditional notion, which is one that gives the individual personal responsibility and autonomy, is one that gives the individual credit for his or her behavior, and also, on the other hand, blames the individual for his or her behavior.
Blaming people for their behavior is one of the most detrimental things of our so-called advanced culture. Their behavior is shaped by the culture they're brought up in.
And of course, that's built upon or based upon an assumption that we are free and we freely choose our behavior. But a scientific perspective actually takes the opposite viewpoint. The scientific perspective is a determinist one, which suggests that our behavior is lawful and orderly, our behavior is caused.
There's no serial killer that doesn't have a background that made him that way. Every gangster, every New York gangster is made that way by associating with people like that.
Our social and legal systems blame and punish the individual. Yet these attempts to modify conduct by punitive means ignores the person's background and surroundings, which shape that behavior to begin with.
From old-school prison gangs to disruptive street gangs, it's a dangerous mix for staff and inmates alike.
Research shows that learning also changes the physical and chemical structure of the brain. Obviously, there are many contributing factors, but genes play a small role in comparison to the effects of the overall environment on how we learn.
No Chinese baby was ever born speaking Chinese. Did you know that? They had to go to school to learn the language. No French baby was ever born speaking French. No matter how many years the parents spoke French, they have to learn it.
Our cerebral cortex is really built on plasticity. Our behavior is very malleable and very adaptive. We're the most adaptive creature on the planet. And if you look at the history of humankind on the planet, you can see that we've learned to adapt to every single environment on the planet.
The only difference between a preacher and a thief is the environment they're reared in.
We don't come to our own conclusions without any outside influences. We don't change our minds. Our minds are changed by events.
What passes for science in our culture is a combination of scientific data, but interpreted through an ideological lens. So we must never think of it as pure science. And unfortunately, it's not a conscious ideological lens, so that the practitioners are not aware that they have an ideology. They didn't choose that ideology, they simply grew up in it, and they were trained in it. And they think that they're looking objectively at the world. But as the Buddha pointed out 2,500 years ago, we create the world with our minds. So the kind of perspective that we have will shape what we see. And that's absolutely true of science as well. Now what I'm interested in looking at is, before with our minds we create the world, how does the world create our minds? So what kind of minds are we looking at the world with? And that's the question that Western medicine doesn't ask very much.